Hi guys, welcome back to Thela Fashion. In today's video we're making a mini skirt with a front slit. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like this video, leave a comment down below, and let's get right into this tutorial. I'm going to be making this pattern on a brown pattern paper, and I'm starting with the front piece. I have folded the pattern paper into two so I can make the pattern for the front piece unfold. The first measurement I put down is the width of the dart from the center front line, and I took 4 inches for that. Next, I took 0.5 inch at the top for the top seam allowance. Then I'm going to go ahead to take the length of the skirt, and I'm not going to be including the 0.5 because that's the allowance and we're going to take that out later. So you take your length from the seam allowance that you've already drawn out. So after marking out the length, I'm just going to go ahead to mark out 1 inch below that for the bottom seam allowance. Next, I'll be measuring out the dart, and the length I'm taking is 4.5 inches and the width is 1 inch, which is 0.5 to the left and 0.5 to the right of that dart line. So now I can go over to the round measurements, and I'm starting with the waist. I'm going to take the waist measurement, divide it by 4, and then add my seam allowance, which is 1.5, but I'm also going to add back the 1 inch that I took for the dart back into the measurement. So waist measurement divided by 4, you add back your 1 inch and then 1.5 seam allowance. So in order to get the hip points, I'm going to be measuring 8 inches from the top seam allowance and just mark it out. So that will be our hip point, and we can take our round hip measurements from there. So for the hip measurement, I'm going to divide it by 4 and mark out whatever I have, and then add 1.5 seam allowance. And whatever measurements I have for the hip, I'm just going to put that at the bottom also. So now that we're done with the front piece, we can go ahead to trace out the pattern of the front piece for the back piece. The only difference is that would be adding 1 inch zip allowance at the center back. So now I'm going to open up the front piece so we can cut out the slit, and I prefer using the left dart line, so I'm just going to cut that out and also cut out the dart. So now I'm going to go ahead to cut this pattern on fabric, and I'm starting with one side of the front piece, but I'm also going to add 0.5 seam allowance at the dart line so we don't end up taking away from the skirt. So I folded in the bottom and top seam allowances, and this is the back of the front piece. And then I'm just going to go ahead to cut out the lining. So you could decide to also not attach lining to yours. It totally depends on you. But for this piece, I'll be attaching lining. So after cutting out the lining, I'm just going to go ahead to start sewing, and I'm starting with sewing the fabric to the lining, and I'm going to be doing that by sewing in the top and the bottom seam allowances, and I'll use that to turn it inside out. So this is how it looks after attaching the lining, and I'm just going to repeat the process for the remaining pieces. This is what we have now after attaching the lining. I also went ahead to iron it flat so it could be neat. I'm just going to go ahead to create the slit, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 4 inches from the bottom at the slit line, and I'm just going to notch it. So after notching, how I'm going to sew this is that I'm going to turn it inside out and then sew from the bottom up till the 4-inch mark, and then turn it back inside out. So this is what I have now. Then I'm just going to go ahead to join the two pieces together, and then I would go ahead to sew the dart for the front and the back pieces. So after fixing the dart on the back piece also, I'm just going to go ahead to attach the zip. But before attaching the zip, I'm just going to sew across the zip allowance, which I picked 1 inch for. Just going to sew that down first before loosening the part for the zip and then attaching the zip. So this is what I have after attaching the zip. Now I'm just going to go ahead to sew the front piece to the back piece, and I'm going to take the round measurements again. And this is the finished look. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comment section, and I'm going to do well to reply to all your questions. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like this video, leave a comment down below, turn on your post notifications so you get notified each time I post. Thank you, and I'll see you in my next video.